Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Today, we've got a special guest. Unfortunately, Vincent Turner isn't going to be with us today. This is a Friday taping. Normally, we do this on Wednesday, and I want to thank Juan McDaniels, our guest today, for being able to work around my schedule. I was in Hoover, Alabama, which is one of those spots where if you ever heard anything about high school football, you know that Hoover is one of the meccas because of Rush Probst and things that went on there just south of Birmingham a few years ago. But my son was at a baseball tournament, and Juan and I had to kind of schedule some things a little bit differently because of our kids. And I appreciate greatly that he was able to work things out with me and move things around in his busy schedule. I am very grateful. But with us today, former University of Georgia Bulldog, a Norcross Blue Devil, professional athlete, obviously, from the National Football League perspective, but the World League of Football, and a dad who's now in the middle of raising a son who's in the NIL era and the portal and everything else that's going on. What an amazing time just to be a part of that college football scene. But Juan McDaniels, first and foremost, Juan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on today.
I really am glad that you're on too, and I'm excited equally because the more that I dug into your background and found a little bit more about you, especially for folks here in Georgia, your ties to Gwinnett County, to Albany, to the University of Georgia system and everything else that's been around it, to Buford football. My goodness, there's so much that we're going to be able to talk about today. But Juan, catching up with you involves, in my opinion, starting at birth. You were born in Albany, Georgia, but then you moved to Cincinnati. You got some Ohio in you. Are you a Buckeye deep down inside?
No, not even close. Not even close. I am a Cincinnati Bengal fan. And so growing up, watching the Cincinnati Bengals, that was a dream of mine to play for Cincinnati. Back then, it was Chris Collingsworth. I think it was like Kenny Stabler was the quarterback.
Boomer Esiason. Boomer.
Yeah, Boomer Esiason. Yeah, he was. Yeah. So we had a pretty good team. They actually went to the Super Bowl, and again, a dream of mine was to play. So I actually got an opportunity to fulfill that dream later on in life.
No kidding. I mean, just amazing. Now, Cincinnati, the Reds, of course, are the big thing. They don't have a basketball. The state of Ohio has hockey now, but really two sports that kind of vie for each other. But let's be honest, there's nothing that takes bigger precedence than watching the Buckeyes on Saturday.
Yeah, especially up in Cincinnati, Columbus area. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Is that where you first started playing ball?
No, I actually started when I moved down to Georgia, 8 years old. I played in a Pop Warner League called North DeKalb. So that's kind of where I started. And it's a funny story. When I actually put the pads on, they put me at an offensive guard. And as soon as they snapped the ball, I would run out for a pass and throw my hands up and say, "Hey, I'm open." And they had to explain to me, this is not street football.
That's right.
Yeah, they're like, you have to block. And I was like, wait a minute, but I can catch passes. So like, throw me the ball. And it was funny too. So I told this story before. My first actual day we were hitting. I was running the football, I was running up high, and somebody put their helmet right into my stomach and knocked the wind out of me. That's the first time I've ever had the wind knocked out of me. And so I'm sitting over there, I'm crying, and my mom comes over, and I just said, "Mom, I don't want to play football anymore." And she's kind of smiling, kind of grits her teeth a little bit. She's like, "Boy, I paid $50 for you to play, and you're going to finish out this season." So I definitely finished out that season. So she taught me early that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to finish it out and never quit.
Well, thank you, Mom, for doing that in many different ways. But also, there's a certain toughness that the first time you go through it, you're gasping for air. And I would imagine there's that helplessness that every kid feels that first time. I don't know what to do here. I'm not comfortable right now. The pain, yes, but the panic that also creeps in. Mom says you're going to be okay. Get back in there. I got $50 on the line because of that.
And hey, back then, $50 back in 1983, that was a lot of money.
It's big money today. Now, yeah, it's probably 100. Well, you probably couldn't even.
Now it's like, some of these leagues are. I mean, some of these places are $400 or $500 just to play for a season. So again, $50 back then.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
lot.
How about that? Now, are you guilty, as I was when I was a younger boy, of being husky, which is a polite way of saying you're chubby and you're a little overweight kid?
No, I was not. It was kind of unusual. We played in a weight league. I was really tall. And so the first year we played like 80 pound, and I was tall, but I was still around 70, almost 75 pounds. So
Okay.
I was a bigger kid, but I was super, super lean.
Gotcha. And then guard, they probably had a coach's kid or two that was playing wide receiver and quarterback, and you didn't know, no one knew you, so they stick you at guard for a little while. When
Yes.
did they figure out, hey, this kid can not only run, but he can jump, he can catch, and he's
It,
very difficult to
it
tackle?
wasn't until high school. So I played offensive tackle and defensive tackle all the way up until the 8th grade. And
Wow.
so coming into high school, I was still pretty tall. And of course, I had those big, giant, humongous pads. And so I still wanted to be a lineman. And so I was playing some offensive tackle, but I was also our punter because I could kick. And so the coach, they put me back to punt. We were scrimmaging the B team. They hiked the ball over my head. So I run back, I go pick the ball up, and I outrun the B team and score. And my coach was like, I think we're going to change your position. So I then went from tackle to running back. And then from there, it was unique at Norcross. We had a 4 wide receiver set. So we were actually one of the first and only teams that were running the spread back then, 4 wide receivers. So then they transitioned me from a running back to a wide receiver, to a slot receiver.
Well, and that brings up a couple of interesting points. I'm going to start first and foremost with the offensive line aspect of it. You learn how to block, you learn how to get blocked and get out of that. Is that an important factor that carried into your wide receiver of being able to do things a little bit better from a run perspective that can get you in the lineup?
Oh, it was essential. Learning how to block, learning how to position your body. Not only that, just knowing where's the defensive line lined up, where are the linebackers lined up, and then also that just you kind of migrate up to the safeties. And so it taught me to be a more complete, a better football player. So I would say, a lot of times they say that the quarterback is usually the smartest guy on the field, but a lot of times it's the offensive lineman because of the checks and the different things. The center is definitely the smartest with all the things that they have to do and be aware of, and they change calls. So being an offensive lineman helped me to become a more complete football player and really understand the game of football.
Yeah, I appreciate your view of that, of the dumb jock football player. Okay, we may not know algebra and chemistry the way that everybody else does, but some of them couldn't figure out whether or not you're supposed to block this blitz, fan to the right, fan to the left, which way you're going to work your offensive slide, all the things that are important to that. Another thing that I wanted to ask in terms of, tell somebody who doesn't know, because I get it, and I'm not saying that because I'm better than anybody else, how difficult it is when you're a wide receiver and you've got to block, let's say, a cornerback. He's 8 yards away from you, and you have to get him, not only the timing of that, but his ability to get around you can really affect a play if the cornerback is successful of that. So how did you learn to be able to anticipate what they were going to do and still be able to get your hands on him long enough to where it's not going to be a holding penalty, and short enough to where it's right about the time when the back is going to want to make a cut right off your backside and take it up the field?
Right. Well, the easiest thing, that I had to learn and understand was everything had to be the same. So if I were running a running play, it still needed to look like I was running a go route or a fast route and just take off, and then I can break down and go. Because a lot of times you'll see in the NFL, you'll see it in college football, high school football, that if it's a running play, a lot of times receivers just kind of jog off the ball and they give it away right away versus taking off. And so, I do a little bit of training, and I tell these kids, I said, everything, whether it's blocking, whether it's a slant, whether it is a go ball, it all has to look like a go ball. You have to explode. So that was one of the things that really helped me to get those guys to back up, and then just kind of having that, just doing that little dance, right? You're just having that mirror where you're just kind of bouncing back and forth to try to get yourself in a position, and then you strike. So it's a lot that's involved.
There's a certain fear factor that you have to overcome as a in motion. You're going to be in the slot at the snap of the ball, and there's either an outside linebacker, a defensive end, or a safety coming down. And there's a split second where there's going to be head-to-head combat, right? We're gonna clash into one another. That's not easy to overcome, but I would imagine going up against a defensive tackle or a nose guard like you would as a guard or a tackle on the offensive line help to train you to do that as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's going to be angles as well. So if I'm a skinny small wide receiver and I've got to go block a linebacker, I'm not going to hit him head on. I'm just going to take one shoulder or the other and then strike, and then that's going to push him this way or that way. Because the law of physics is, it's going to tell me if I'm going to go head on, I'm going to probably lose that battle each and every time. So a lot of it's footwork, and then again, knowing where to strike on the body to move that person to where you need them to be.
And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's a consistent thing over a season, over 2 seasons. I would imagine that you got more comfortable the longer you were on a football field, to where you show up at Norcross, right? You're a freshman there, and you're a step ahead of most of the guys. Maybe a few are equal there with you, but I would imagine that there's a certain aspect of that, knowing their system, obviously, but just being able to do it at full speed. That has to be something that every kid has to be concerned about, because how am I going to impress the coaches? I'm going to show them what I can do from the very beginning.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that too, and we had back then it was, those coaches, you feared them. And I remember, our wide receiver coach, and I remember our head coach saying, you guys catch the ball and you learn this stuff or else. And we learned it. We were that afraid of our coaches, but it was a healthy fear. Like it was a respectful thing. And also too, then it was a privilege to play football, not a right. And so when you look at it like that, coming up, you take pride in what you do. There's attention to detail, and you want to go out, just like you said, and really go out and impress the coaches.
Brings up an interesting point. So Keith Maloof is the head coach there at Norcross. Just recently retired. 26 years, 2 state championships. You were a part of what his legacy was. You mentioned some of the other coaches around him. Every head coach is going to say, I couldn't have done it without my assistants. Obviously, it's the players. Give a little shout out to some of the guys that really made a difference in advancing you from your freshman to, let's say, your junior year. There's something that happens in that time where every kid, in my opinion, that I've had a chance to visit with, said something happened, I got it, and I knew that I had a chance to make it at the next level.
Well, it was, my head coach was Coach, Theo Caldwell, and he really poured into me. The same with it was our offensive line coach. His name is Coach Ron Green. He actually coaches track over at Buford.
Okay.
But there was tireless hours that they put in for us. And that's taking time away from family. That's just taking time away from things that they like to make sure that we were successful. And it was one of those things where you're just like, they are truly a dad on and off the field. That's how much they cared about you. That's how much they poured into you. And so, and again, you got guys like Maloof, who actually, when I was in high school, he was actually at Meadow Creek. And so I know a lot of the guys that he coached, and I played flag football with a lot of guys, and they were at Meadow Creek. And just the effort and everything that they put in, they want you to be successful. They want you to be not only just like on the field, but they want you to be men. They want you to graduate, and they want you to go and represent Norcross and wherever you go. And so when you know that they love you and they care for you, and they're looking at something beyond just you helping their football team get better, that's when it starts to click, and you feel like, I should be giving more. I should be doing more and sacrificing more because of what they are sacrificing. And I can comfortably tell you that is the biggest reason that I was successful when I was in high school, to get an opportunity to go play at the next level.
So interesting that you said that. I've said to countless people, I don't like to get yelled at, but if I know that my head coach loves me, yes, or that he cares about my success, he has permission that nobody else would have. I know there are coaches out there that I know didn't care about me, and when they yelled at me, it turned me off, as opposed to getting me to where I would fight for you. I'd go through a wall for you. I'd do anything to make sure that I made you as a coach appreciate my efforts. And I'm glad that you articulated it the same way, or at least very similar to that.
Yeah,
That's a big difference maker, isn't it, Juan?
it's a huge difference maker. And I will forever be thankful for that. I want to say a couple of years ago when my son he was a senior in high school, we played Habersham, and I got an opportunity to sit with Coach Caldwell and Coach Green.
Wow.
And we were all sitting at a game, and Coach Smith, who was a defensive back coach, and just the respect that I have. I promise you, and I tell people to this day, I'm still afraid of Coach Caldwell. That was my head coach. If he told me to run, 100 gassers full speed, I would go do it. That's the respect that I have for him, and I'll always feel that way about him.
Isn't it cool that when you get a chance to revisit a few years later, a decade later, sometimes even further back than that, 20 years, you shake their hand, look them square in the eye, and just say thank you.
Yes.
You helped me being a snot-nosed little punky kid, and I grew up into something completely different, in part because of your influence on my life.
Yeah, well, and the great thing about it is having them tell you where they saw you before, and then how they saw you evolve, because a lot of times you don't necessarily see it. It takes this is where you started, and here's the finished product. But as they were just taking you and molding you, that they can actually look back like a proud dad and say, man, we really poured into Juan, and he accepted it, and now look where he is, and look what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not just you, but some others. Norcross had some championship teams. There were some great players that came out of that. One of the things that now this is the Keith Maloof era. There was one year when they won the state championship. I believe there were 23 seniors that were recruited and ended up at D1 schools. 23. Yeah. That means the offense, defense, and then one other guy even added on to that, ended up getting a chance to play. You saw a little bit of that as well. Obviously, from a recruiting perspective, you see different coaches on your campus every now and then. They're there to see somebody else when you're a freshman and a sophomore, but before you know it, they're there to see you. Talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like.
It's funny because I didn't really, all I wanted to do was just play football, hang out with my friends. And I didn't really know how good I was. I mean, I could catch the ball, I'd take it and score, but I never thought about it until I started getting letters. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to get, phone calls. And I still remember my senior year, and I was actually, I know sounds crazy, but I was actually kind of embarrassed. Coach Paterno came to my school and wanted to sit down at lunch with me and eat. And, I was kind of embarrassed because I was like, I don't want people ribbing me and going, oh, he's big time. He's, whatever. But when that happened, I just thought, wow, like that's really, really cool. And then they just started talking about, hey, we want to give you an opportunity to get your school paid for. We want you to come and play football. And I was like, what? And which is great, because I didn't necessarily, my sophomore year, junior, I didn't necessarily have a plan on what I was going to do for school. I was just enjoying high school life. And all of a sudden, here come these college offers just come crashing in. And I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Now, was Joe bigger or smaller than you thought? And here's a personality. I've seen you on TV and you're standing right here in front of me and you want to talk to me? Are you kidding?
Yeah, he had he was definitely smaller. He had those super thick glasses.
I was going to ask you about that, but thank you for beating me to the punch. Yes.
Yeah, and you're just kind of looking at him, and you're just looking like, this is not like the coach that I see on TV. For whatever reason, these guys are huge, they're big. Same thing with like a Lou Holtz. Like I see Lou Holtz in person, and I'm like, what? Like that's Lou Holtz?
Yeah.
So it's kind of shocking, because especially how animated they are on the field, and you're seeing these guys yell at these big, huge football players, and and you're just like, wait, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. His thick glasses, very soft spoken, I think in private, right? And Lou isn't much bigger than a postage stamp, is he?
Right.
I mean, just a little guy. But you know what? They're great leaders of men, or at least they have been in their past, and they're there to see you. My understanding, and I'm going to throw this in right now, you wanted to be a Tiger, didn't you? War Eagle.
Yeah, War Eagle. Yeah, I was a diehard Auburn fan. So, going back to when I was 8 years old, my cousin Greg Pratt, he blocked for Bo Jackson. So when they won that, it was, I guess it's the Iron Bowl, when Bo Jackson's like Bo over the top. My cousin was in that game blocking, his number 36. And unfortunately, the summer before I turned 8, he unfortunately passed away, and from a heat stroke. So they do their workouts, and they were running the 440s, and he unfortunately passed away from a heat stroke. So I then was die hard, and it's funny because going back, I had to be corrected. I actually thought they were the Albany Tigers. So he lived in Albany, so I always thought, oh man, I want to play for the Albany Tigers, and they're like, no, it's the Auburn Tigers, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so everything I had was Auburn, and even going up into the high school, you could look. I took every article, every newspaper clipping, every magazine, and I tore it out and taped it onto my wall. And everything I had was Auburn. And one of the best gifts I ever got from my aunt was his Letterman jacket. And I cried, when I got that. And so unfortunately, that's when they went on probation. That was the Eric Ramsey deal where, unfortunately he was getting, he was getting a little money, which of course nowadays that would have been perfectly fine. So after that, I remember sitting talking to Pat Dye. We were on the phone. We were watching a Braves game, and he said, "Juan, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what's going to happen here, but there's a good chance I won't be here next year. So if you decide to go somewhere else or do something, no one's going to be mad at you. Everybody's going to understand." And I just told him, I said, "It's between you and Georgia." He said, "Hey, I graduated from Georgia, so if that's not a bad place to be." And I just appreciated that from him. Him being candid. That's also coming off to, SMU not too long ago just literally got the death penalty. So we didn't know if Auburn was going to get the death penalty. It was 2 years of no TV, 2 years of no bowl games is what it ended up being. But before that, it was just kind of up in the air.
Was any other team, school, were they interested at all? I mean, here you are at two of the higher SEC level teams at that time. That had to be, like, from a confidence standpoint. I'm being recruited to play at some of the best schools in the country, and they're kind of fighting over me.
Yeah, well, it was also Florida as well. So Steve Spurrier. So I only took 2 official visits. One was to Georgia, one was to Florida. I had an opportunity to go pretty much anywhere. Back then, it was the 5 stars would have been considered a blue chipper. So
right,
I was blessed to be a blue chipper. So I had an opportunity to go anywhere. So I was getting recruited by everyone. My phone never stopped ringing. There was the point where we had to take it off the hook. So that's kind of ages me a little bit when you say that you have to take your phone off the hook. So I didn't get any phone calls after 10. But I did. I had an opportunity to go pretty much anywhere I wanted. And but I was a mama's boy, I'll be honest, and I just kind of wanted to stay local.
What about Florida's campus was impressive to you?
Ben Griffey Stadium is amazing. The atmosphere. Also, it was kind of cool because at the time the dorm was actually at the stadium, so everything was there. So you walk out of your dorm and you're at practice, and you walk out of your dorm and everything is right there. At the time, they had a great quarterback. Shane Matthews was the quarterback. They had some great receivers. Jack Jackson, Aubrey Hill. They had a lot of great, and just the atmosphere, the team atmosphere was good, and they were on the verge of winning. And they were also a passing team as well. So there was a huge allure to that. And I remember after talking to Steve Spurrier, he's like, "What do you think?" I was like, "I love it." He's like, "Good. we'll go ahead and sign you right now. And I was like, whoa, wait, I still got another official visit.
Yeah. That's boy. Some folks don't get out of that in the same way. They okay, all right, give me a pen.
Yeah.
But you went to Florida first, and then was it a few days or was it a week, a couple
It
of
was
weeks?
like because we got 5, but I was also playing basketball as well too. So I didn't want to. I mean, a lot of our games were on the weekend, so I just picked Florida and Georgia to go to.
Okay.
I wasn't going to go to Auburn because I knew what was going on. I wasn't going to waste anybody's time, go out to the West Coast, or just go to other places. I kind of knew that it was either going to be Georgia or Florida, most likely Georgia. So I just kind of shut it down after that.
Was there an interest in Florida prior to the recruiting process? In other words, did you like the Gators, or was there something about the school?
I did. I grew up a big time Emmitt Smith fan. I loved Emmitt Smith,
Sure.
and so my it's crazy. My freshman year, when I did go from tackle to running back, I got a chance to switch my number. They gave me an opportunity to say, well, what do you want your number to be? I said, I want to be 22. And I want to be the freshman sensation, because back then they called Emmitt Smith the freshman sensation.
Sure.
So that's who I wanted to be. So I did. I grew up being an Emmitt Smith fan and a Florida fan because of that.
And how about Georgia? Had you been to any UGA games prior to going on your recruiting trip there?
Yes, I did. So my junior year, they give you a couple of tickets and you get a chance to go to a couple of games. So I went to a couple of Georgia games, Georgia Tech games, Florida games. But I also was a Herschel Walker fan as well. So I loved Herschel Walker growing up. I think everybody wanted to be 34, growing if you lived in Georgia.
Yeah.
So I did. I grew up a big time Georgia fan. I remember watching the national championship in 1980, and being 7 years old, being in Cincinnati, going let's go Georgia, because that's where all my family was in Georgia, even though I was living in Cincinnati. So
yeah. We'll talk about him right now, if you don't mind. You got a chance to be there at the school. I'll go back a little bit with you later on, but have you ever had a chance to meet Herschel or to visit with him? Has he been on campus while you were playing?
No, he didn't come back, and no, I have not had an opportunity. And it's funny because there's a couple of alumni events that they have, and it's like the ones that I miss, he's there. The ones that I'm there, he's not there. So
Okay.
I never had an opportunity to cross paths.
So there's still that zig and zag thing.
Yes. Yes.
I'll ask now: Stetson Bennett or Herschel Walker? Who's the greatest Bulldog of all time, in your opinion?
Herschel Walker, hands down.
There are so many that will say the same, and I add Stetson into it because 2 national championships usually beats 1. So that's why I put him as a part of that. It's an interesting debate. There's no wrong answer, but things have gone so well, and we'll hit on that in just a little minute. But you decided on Georgia. Was there something about the game, the experience? Was there something about one of the coaches? What was the click that connected you to the school to where you said, nope, this is it. I've made the decision before I even tell my parents. I know what I'm doing, and it's the right one for me.
It was Eric Zaire.
Really?
Eric Zaire he was going to be an upcoming sophomore. I'd be a freshman coming in. I actually watched him play against Southwest DeKalb when he was at Marietta. We actually drove out to watch a game, watch him play, and I just thought he was special. And I was like, hey, if I'm going to go somewhere, I at least want to be somewhere where you're going to have a quarterback that's going to be there at least 2 to 3 years, and get an opportunity to catch some passes from him. I just think that was awesome. He was a great leader, a great person, and so that was my biggest draw. As you're sitting there looking at your future.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put that into perspective. A lot of guys don't do the math, or at least try to figure out now what's it going to be like. Now they get it. Hey, we're going to have a really good team. The coach has told me so. I know the national rankings are going to agree with that. But what's it going to be like 3 or 4 years later? So you got to weigh all that in. Was that something you did on your own, or did some of your other Norcross or other teammates that you had throughout the years, did they give you that type of advice? Was it your parents? Tell me a little bit more about
that was just kind of on my own. Again, just going to go see him play in person in high school, and then going to a couple of those games my senior year on those Saturdays and watching him play. and then having him get the opportunity to start like as a freshman, I was like, wow, like that's pretty awesome. And I think the future is going to be bright for Georgia. And I would love just to kind of be a part of that.
Well, you end up being a Bulldog, and I have to admit, especially here in Georgia, I was in Alabama, this just a couple of days ago, and you can't get away from it. It's Roll Tide everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some Auburn fans, but really it's 90, maybe 92, 95% is Roll Tide. I believe the percentages are very similar here in Georgia. Yes, there are some Tech fans, and they're very loyal. They love their school and have numerous reasons to do so. But Georgia's a Bulldog state, and so now you become a part of that. Was that bigger for you? Did you already know how to embrace the size and scope of everybody in Georgia, with the exception of the few Tech fans are, go dog sick 'em? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. I did go to a couple of the Georgia Tech games, and they had really good quarterback. Sean Jones was the quarterback, but I knew he was leaving, and I didn't know who was coming in after that. But just to be a Bulldog, I mean, it is diehard Bulldog country when you come to Georgia, and just to hear that "Go Dog," being in that stadium, and there was a huge difference too. Like you go to downtown Georgia, downtown Atlanta, and play in Georgia Tech in that smaller stadium, and then you go to Georgia and you hear that crowd roaring and just the atmosphere. It was just, I mean, it was night and day for me.
Yeah, I agree, and I would think that Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi, and State both have smaller stadiums. LSU is enormous, and it is a special place.
Yes.
Alabama is a special place. I think Florida is a special place, although it's smaller also. It's 78, which is nothing small about it.
But as a player, they're sitting on top of you, though. Like,
isn't that amazing? Yeah, you look up. Well, your experience, tell me.
Yeah, what it is. I mean, you just don't realize it until you go, and you can literally turn around and they are just yelling and screaming, and they're just cussing you up and down, and and doing what fans are supposed to do, right? Like they're supposed to to rib the opponents, but it can be intimidating. It can be very intimidating.
I agree, and I think that there's again, there is it teammates, is it coaches, who preps you to be able to go, you know what, I'm in a place where everyone in there, except for that small little group that is seated way in the corner that's wearing red, everyone else of this 90, 100,000 person stadium wants you to fail. How do you mentally overcome that type of thing to where you go, I'm going to relax. When the ball's in the air, I'm going to go jump up and get it, just like I do in my backyard, just like I do in practice every day, just like I do in Sanford Stadium, and I'm going to make a name for myself here on their turf.
Well, they do a great job of prepping you. One of the first places or the away games that I went to was Tennessee, and I don't know if you've been to a Tennessee game, the loudest place I've ever been. So what they did that week, and I didn't understand it at first. As soon as everybody was talking, as soon as you stepped on the field, you were not allowed to say a word, not a single word. And then all they did was blare Rocky Top the entire week, the entire practice. And I didn't get it. I was like, okay, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you get there. And then you've got 100 and so thousand fans, and they're screaming, and all that is just coming down. And you could be a foot away from somebody and yell at the top of your lungs, and you won't be able to hear a single. Yeah. And I was just shocked, but how well we were prepared just to do that. I mean, they just prepared us to say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to have to do. This is what our focus is going to have to be. So you don't have an excuse as to why you can't perform at a top level.
I think that's great that they go, hey, you're not going to talk to anybody. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. The whole team is relying on it, and we're not going to get a flag because somebody does something stupid. We're not going to point. We're not going to speak. And hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And I think too, Juan, the early important games that Georgia plays every year. There was a Clemson rivalry that went on forever. There's the Tennessee rivalry of South Carolina. Games that you've got to win early and often. Year after year. you learned to play at a very high level from a very, very quick jump from you getting on that campus, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah, you have to. You have to be prepared. And just like any sport, there's always going to be somebody competing for your position. Not only that, they're recruiting people to come in and compete for your position. So it's either sink or swim. And you got to perform at a high level each and every day. Because if you don't, then you'll be sitting on the sidelines just kind of cheering your teammates, going on the field, and that's not something you want to do.
Yeah, I hate to bring this picture up, but this is a Florida one that I found, and there's something coming loose. I think it's called the pigskin.
Yes.
Big plays, important plays. No game ends on one single play. I get it. But one single play can make a huge difference. Unlike what reporters and most coaches will tell you, when it's 3rd and 7 with 2 minutes and 15 seconds, you only got one timeout. Yeah, every play is big and it's important. What was it like for you getting a chance to be a part of the lineup and compete? I think you practice better when you know you're going to play. I think you prepare yourself differently. Explain that process from your vantage point when you first get there on that UGA campus.
Mine was a little bit different. So one of the things that I had trouble with was practice. I just was not a very good practice person. So I learned, I got the concepts, but actually going through the motions and doing the practice, I just was not very good. I was not very focused. And so I didn't do what I needed to do. So that actually kept me off the field for a couple of years.
Wow.
And my wide receiver coach, it was Daryl Drake. He called my head coach and he just said, Coach Caldwell, I'm very frustrated with Juan. Like I don't know what to do with him. And my coach, high school coach, said, "This is going to sound crazy. He's just a gamer. He does horrible at practice, but if you put him in the game, he's a completely different person," which is kind of hard to grasp if you're a college coach and you're trying to put guys on the field that's going to score points and make plays. And so he finally did it. He finally just put me in, and I kind of took off from there. And but there was some big games I had. Like I had a big game in '94 against Auburn, and that week of practice, it's probably one of my worst weeks. And he told me, he said, I went and told Coach Golf. I said, I don't even want to dress you this week. Like that's how bad it was. And then I go in the game, and so it's a little different. As long as I have the concepts down, I can do it. I just hated the practice.
Isn't it weird though? I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just some guys do better with trigonometry and calculus than they do with algebra and long division.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can't explain it because most guys say practice makes perfect, and you've got to do it right in practice in order to earn the right and the ability to be able to get on the field. That's just the natural progression of things.
Yes.
So thank you, Coach Caldwell, for going, listen, with this one guy, I can assure you, I know he's going to drop everything. He's going to look like he doesn't even belong at the wide receiver position. You may want to put him at guard and not have to worry about it. But, man, stick him in on a game, and he is going to fight. That 50-50 ball is going to be his.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember Garrison Hurst. He came back one year, and so he was in the hall, and he was talking to my wide receiver coach, Daryl Drake. And this was before Daryl, Coach Drake even put me in the game. And Garrison's like, "Hey, is Juan in the zone? Is he ready yet?" And Coach Drake goes, "He'll never be in the zone. He'll never be ready." And I know at certain points he had to be looking like, how in the world did this guy get a scholarship? There's just no way.
Yeah.
And then it just, again, they stick me in the game, and it's just they don't even know who I am.
Well, it's interesting. Some of your highlight reel, going over the middle, that ball's yours.
Yeah.
Post routes, especially from the slot, a skinny post, something like that, ball's yours. Deep out routes, you're able to make all of these catches that are critical to any offense. But you hated curl routes. You hated going up the field 10, 12, 14 yards, stopping turning around, having your shoulders and your numbers face the quarterback for whatever reason. What was it about that one particular route that just gave you the willies?
It was just hard for me. So I have a short torso, long legs, and so normally people will run that route and they'll stop and they'll be like maybe 1, 2, 3, and then turn around and then be able to turn around and catch that ball. For me, it was like 6 or 7 steps before I could even stop my body and even just try to turn around. And then
Yeah.
a lot of times too, I would run and then try to do it, and then I would slip just because I just had so many steps, or my feet would just get, they just come from underneath me. And it was just ironic that the very first play that I ever scored a touchdown on was a post. And I remember, me being rotated in, and they called that play, and I was like, oh, please don't throw it to me. Please don't throw it to me.
Really? You didn't want it?
I did not. Like that one, like if you give me a post or a go route, I would even, catch a slant or crossing route. But please don't just have me run that curl. And sure enough, I got it, and I caught it, and I shook a guy and went around and scored, and I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Good things happen every now and then, don't they?
Yeah, let's say a blind squirrel finds a nut, right?
Every now and then. But how did you pick 12? Was that the only one available at the time?
It was. So
Okay.
When I was in high school, I was number 14. Again, growing up a diehard Auburn fan, Auburn had a quarterback, number 14, Randy Campbell. So I wanted to be number 14. And when I got to Georgia, Preston Jones, he was a quarterback. He had number 14. So they gave me number 12.
Okay.
And when he left, then Bobo ended up getting 14. Bobo,
Right.
he was 14 in high school. So
Yeah.
I wasn't going to fight that. And I didn't mind having number 12. So I ended up loving it.
Well, Mike had a great career, had a lot of balls that he threw to you. Eric Zier, you mentioned Hines Ward before we went on the air. Talk about that, the relationship with Hines, and what a tremendous athlete he was in terms of, starting out as a quarterback, ending up being an NFL Hall of Famer, and obviously a UGA Hall of Famer. You're around a lot of great athletes there.
Yeah, we had. Hines Ward was just one of those guys that he came in as a quarterback, but he just wanted to be a Georgia Bulldog. And that's what he did. He played running back, he was receiver, he played quarterback, whatever he needed to do. My junior year, Bobo got hurt, I think the 4th game of the season. Then they went to Brian Smith, and Brian Smith were playing Alabama. He ends up getting hurt against Alabama. And then so Hines was our quarterback for the remainder of the year. And, he just, his effort. I mean, his effort. He would have done anything that he possibly could to win games. And so in doing that, he got us to a bowl game. And we unfortunately lost to Virginia. They had the Barber brothers, Rondé and Tiki Barber. But just the grit, his work ethic is just out of this world. And I go back and I wish that I would have done more like he did. I mean, he put the work in the weight room, extra routes, just doing extra things. I was blessed with a lot of speed. I was a 4.2, 4.3 guy easily. So I didn't really do a whole lot to work on the things that I should have worked on. But if I had his work ethic, it probably would have had probably a little bit better of an outcome than I had.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about, the expectations. Let's go to your senior year. Everybody wants to end with at least a bowl game, obviously a division champ, or at least, playing for that, to go for the SEC championship. Was that something that was instilled? It's okay for the press to tell you how good you are. Yeah, that means nothing. It's okay for the coaches to say, listen, I've been around for a long time. I think you guys are as gifted here this year as any others. We have aspirations for X, for Y, for Z. But if it's not amongst the players, at least in my opinion, it's all for naught, because they've got to be the ones that have to be able to go, you know what, we're going to work. We're going to do everything we need to do. We're going to focus. We're going to go to class, and then we're not going to go out.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a certain aspect of where there's a leadership. Now, going into your senior year, how did your leadership change to the point where you go, I get this, and my time is limited. I've only got about 11 or 12 more games here, and I'm going to give it everything I have. Talk about that.
It was. One of the things that I preach now to people that I coach is playing for these seniors. and giving everything that you have, because these seniors will remember this for the rest of their lives. And so that was one of my focuses. And we didn't. We unfortunately did not have a great season my senior year. But again, the memories, the work ethic, there was nothing that you could say, you know what, he didn't give it everything that he had.
Right.
And it wasn't a thing where I was looking to go to the next level. I wanted to be in that moment right then and serve my team as best I could.
Yeah. And, the chips fall where they may. I went to a smaller school. We lost our first game. We lost our last game, and I got hurt, and there's some things that happen. But hard work always pays off. Always. It has to, because, but it's hard work. It's not easy. It would be called something different if it were easy.
Right.
And so you finish up. Now, you've been through some coaching changes as well, obviously. Let's talk a little bit about what that was like.
My senior year, it goes from Coach Goff to Coach Donnan, and completely different offense, completely different concepts. And so it was a little bit different, because normally, in a lot of these, you have these blitz packages, you have these blitz pickups. We didn't have a blitz pickup there. So, just some adjustments and some different things that we had to do. Unfortunately, Bobo didn't have a whole lot of time to, really just step in and get some good throws off. So we just didn't, we weren't, I guess, congruent. We weren't together like we needed to do, but that happens, when you have a coaching change. Obviously, from there on out, they did a lot better, but usually that first year, you're going to have some of those growing pains. And
were there whispers amongst the campus, and maybe with alumni and all the? I know there are at any school in any university, but Georgia, there's so much of an ownership. You listen to. Scott and Eric do the games now, and it's always it's always us. It's not the Georgia Bulldogs. It's not them. It's us. We're all a part of this. Were the whispers that you were hearing about Goff leaving and Donna coming on and other things like that were a concern for you?
It wasn't a way, just because Coach Goff was all I knew for 4 years.
Right.
And for most of those guys that were on the team, that's all we do for 4 years. And then usually and nothing against Coach Donnan, but you're thinking that you're going to get some big name coach that's going to come in, right? A Lou Holtz or Steve Spurrier or whoever's the biggest name, because we're at a prestigious university at Georgia. And then you hear, that you're getting Jim Donnan. And so you're just kind of like, okay, what can we expect? What's going to go on, and then what type of an attitude are we going to have? And fortunately for us, though, we still were together. We still had a positive attitude, and what that did was that just kind of carried on to the next group, so that they can build. And then I think that next year they ended up beating Florida, which was. That was our nemesis for the longest time. I mean, they just owned us. Yeah. And so if we could have done anything to give back to give to the future of the program, I mean, we just kind of banded together and did that.
Did you notice, speaking of Florida, not just amongst the fans, but just the way things were, that was a different rivalry than, let's say, Alabama or LSU? There's a certain aspect of people that I've met over the years that go, there's a respect that the fans have for one another between Alabama and Georgia, to where, we want to win, you want to win, but we're going to be polite. We're going to agree to disagree on who we want to win, but we're going to be respectful of each other. We know that there's a long history there, and we're not going to violate that. Where Georgia, and it is anything goes. It is all's fair in love and war.
It was bad. It was Steve Spurrier hated Georgia with a passion. He never beat Georgia when he was at Florida, even though he won a Heisman Trophy, and he just hated Georgia for whatever reason. And I remember my junior year, it was fourth down, they were about to punt, and they had like 40 something points, and the offensive coordinator said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know no one's ever scored 50 points in Sanford Stadium." And Steve Spurrier calls a timeout, puts the offense back, throws like a post to Chris Doring, and he goes, "Well, now we have." So that was the hatred that he had, and we hated Florida. I mean, we just absolutely. I mean, it was a bitter rival, more so than we did Tech. I mean, we absolutely, and I think it still goes to this day.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the cool things about the rivalries, and you get to be a part of that for the rest of your life, really. You get to
Yeah.
tell that story and so many countless others, as well as watching the today's players and maybe the Herschel story that you may have heard somebody say, tying all of that in together. Boy, the memories, they are as fresh on game day today as they were 40 or 50 years ago. But for you, it's only been about 20 years since
Yeah,
you've experienced some of that stuff. Still, nonetheless, I mean, SEC football, there's something so special about it.
it is. It's so being out with with my son being out at Stanford, and I've had an opportunity to go to a lot of great stadiums, Notre Dame, USC. I've gone to Oregon. Oregon was amazing,
Yeah,
and even going to Syracuse and playing in the Dome, great places, but
yeah.
it does not compare
Is
to.
there any part of Oregon that's not green? I mean, the tree bark is brown, but everything else, it's so green out there.
It's all green. They're awesome. I mean, they're great. They're fans of their football team. I mean, they show up and they show out. But again, it just does not compare to SEC football.
Yeah, yeah. The history, the size of the state. I mean, Autzen Stadium, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's basically a giant circle, but it's an oval shape, when you look at the field.
Yeah,
But
and I
it's
think
only 55.
yeah,
It's 55,000, Juan. I mean, thank you. That we had twice as many people for our spring game,
yeah,
right? At Georgia.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So it just does not compare.
What was Notre Dame like?
Notre Dame was awesome. Just you're looking on the field and it's crazy because you think of like the Newt Rockneys and all of those people that just played. I grew up a big time Joe Montana fan, so I was like, man, like Joe Montana played down on that field, and all these other guys, and so it was just cool, like just the history of it, seeing the touchdown Jesus, the Golden Dome, all of that. It was an experience. It was a bucket list of mine, or going to Oregon and going to Notre Dame. Those were both bucket lists of mine, so I got an opportunity to check those off.
Yeah, amazing. How cool it is to go to different places. Have you been to the Big House, or did you ever, when you were in Cincinnati, did you go to Columbus? Did you ever see any game there?
Those are two that I haven't gone to yet.
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody has their own little list of places that they want to go and see. And my encouragement is to do so, because just as you're doing right now, it puts a smile on your face and it makes you go, wow, this is really a part of the history of our nation that from a football perspective, that I get to be a part of for the rest of my life.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing brings people together like college football.
Yeah, I agree completely. Well, college is over now. You got to graduate. You've got to move on. You're done. What are in the plans for you? What were the immediate next step? Draft, obviously, and getting yourself ready. Talk a little bit about that experience for you.
That's one of the things that if I could do that all over again, I would. I ended up going with an agent that their big thing is, hey, that's when creatine came out, and I was about 183, and like I said, I was running a 4.2, 4.3 easy, and he was like, hey, they got bigger receivers in the NFL now. They're looking for bigger guys, so like a JJ Stokes and all these guys, and we want you to bulk up. And we want you to get big, and that way you're going to be able to take these hits. And so I went from 183, and when I got to the combine, I was 212 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I weighed in at
Hey, Juan, do me a favor. You said we want you to be big. Who told you needed to be big?
That was my agent. My agent told me that.
A guy that's never played is telling you, well, this is what they want right now. They don't want fast. They want big.
They want big guys as long as you can catch. And so I was 212. Gosh, when I ran to the combine, I think I ran like a 4.6, which
Oh my gosh.
I don't think I ran a 4.6, and like since I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. I'm joking, but
Yeah.
I just never felt I've never felt slower, and so then like that takes me from getting an opportunity to be drafted to being an undrafted free agent. And so I originally got picked up by the Indianapolis Colts. So they had Jim Harbaugh was he was my quarterback. Marshall Faulk was there. That was Marvin Harrison's second year that I was there, and so I was got an opportunity. I was in mini camp there, and really, was just doing very well. And actually, I did very well in my preseason games. But they just kind of told me, they said, "Hey, man, we love everything that you do." I picked up the playbook in almost 2 weeks, the entire playbook. And they just said, if you could possibly lose some weight, that would help you out tremendously. And I couldn't lose it. So I ended up getting let go from the Colts, and I was blessed to get picked up by the Bengals. And I enjoyed it. I was from Cincinnati. That was a lifelong dream of mine, was to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I was moseying along through the season. I got an opportunity, so I was on the practice squad, which is kind of tough because, when you're on the practice squad and you go and you make a great play, the coach is like, run it again. Like, how is this guy getting open? And why is he killing you guys? And then the guys are like, dude, are you trying to get us in trouble? Like, what are you doing? And so then you don't go as hard, you don't do. And then the coaches are like, hey, do you want to make this team? Do you want to? So it's kind of like a lose-lose. And people don't understand, when you're on the practice squad, you get beat up pretty bad. It is, it's kind of rough. But it's crazy too, because Boomer Esiason was still there. Jeff Blake was the quarterback, and unfortunately, Jeff Blake got hurt. And so they bring in a quarterback. So who's the guy that they were going to let go? They let me go from there to bring in a guy, Eric Kresser. He played at Florida. So they brought him in. So I was just kind of like, you know what? I enjoyed it. Maybe I want to go and just kind of do something else. And I got a job at Northwest Mutual Insurance. I was going to be selling insurance. And I'm sitting on my couch, and my agent calls and says, "Hey, Juan, Amsterdam, they want to pick you up." And it's on a Wednesday. They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna fly you out there, and you guys have a game on Friday." I was like,
wow.
"Okay." So I also over there they emailed me the playbook. I studied the playbook on the flight over there. Ended up playing in the game on Friday and actually scored the game-winning touchdown from Kurt Warner right there. So it was a lot of fun.
People forget he was an Iowa barnstormer and a Amsterdam. You were the Admirals, right? The Admirals?
Yeah, Admirals, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I tell people this. When the strike of 1987 hit the National Football League, the NFL owners were all looking at each other going, we're not ready for this. They had to bring in, they called them the scabs back then. And I was one. I don't mind it. I was making, 3 times the amount of money in a year that I would have made otherwise, just playing a little bit of football. When I got spit on and they throw rocks at you and do everything that the players would do. But the owners got caught with their pants around their ankles. They weren't ready for this. So in my opinion, one of the reasons that they put the World League together is if there was any strife between the collective bargaining agreement with the owners and the players, they would at least have enough players that could play to where you could keep games on television.
Yep.
Did you know that? Was that something that you were aware of when you went over there?
I was not aware of that, but it totally makes sense.
Yeah. And so they're also trying to grow the game. Don't get me wrong. It's not like that's the only reason, of course, but they weren't winning. It wasn't a very profitable endeavor. That because of what you got paid every week.
Yes. Well, and also too, you go over to Europe, it's all soccer. Soccer is the biggest thing. Football is kind of looked at as if, we were going to go out there and play croquet or, go out there and watch a croquet game, something like that. That's just kind of how they looked at American football over there.
And in the summer too, isn't track and field huge out there? Much bigger than in the States.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Nothing compares to soccer though. I completely agree.
They shut down the entire city for soccer.
Yeah. Now, did you have to pick a team?
For
soccer, do you have a team now that you go? You know what? I like Barcelona.
I don't watch a lot of soccer.
Okay.
Yeah, I watch the Olympics. Obviously, I cheer for the men, USA men for soccer, but yeah, I don't necessarily watch a whole lot of soccer.
Yeah, well, that's been a tough grind. The USA women, obviously, they've been incredibly successful over the years.
Yes.
But what was the experience? Different food, different culture. Amsterdam isn't in that red light district. Please tell me that I didn't go there. I didn't see anything. I didn't order any of the bakery items. Come on.
No, it was cool. It's really cool to get an opportunity to experience different cultures, and you get an opportunity to appreciate, just being over in Germany, being over in Amsterdam, being over in England, and but it also gives you the opportunity to appreciate home as well. One of the things I always tell people, one of the things I loved most was going to the Anne Frank house. That was kind of cool.
Why? I haven't been. I know of Anne Frank, but why was that special for you?
Just the fact, you're looking going back through war times, and you're seeing this family being hidden away in this home, and there's a bookshelf, and then you go up these stairs, and there's a whole, additional room that people are being stowed away in, and just the history of it was cool. The windmills, knowing that Amsterdam could flood at any minute is kind of scary, but it's kind of cool. The food is different. I didn't eat a whole lot when I was over there because I'm usually kind of picky. So there was one one Chinese restaurant that I ate at pretty much every night, and I was like, okay, I like this.
You wore out the Chinese food there while you're in Amsterdam. Hi, Juan. Good to see you again. Come on in, man. Yeah.
My biggest complaint though was probably they don't give you a lot of ice, and I like my drinks cold. And you'll ask for ice, and they'll give you one cube, and if you ask them for another piece of ice, and they're looking at you like, "Come on, man, really?"
Dude, you're such an American. Yeah, everything is room temperature, right? It's really important and the agriculture, the tulips or the lilies, all the things that are around there. There's some portions of every place that you go, man, this is breathtaking.
It is.
This is a special place.
Beautiful. The people were friendly. The people were awesome. They speak 2-3 different languages, which I just thought was amazing. And just having that experience, and then of course having that experience with your teammates was awesome. We're all in a foreign place together, but we stick together. We play together, hang out, and really just take care of each other. And it's just it brings you closer when you're in another country.
Well, you're over there, Amsterdam. You're Frankfurt. You said you got to go to England. I think
Scotland.
Glasgow had a team, if I'm not mistaken. Madrid had a team. You're in 4 or 5 different. Every week, your passport's getting checked off. What was it like with customs? Was it good? Was it easy because they knew that you were with an NFL team?
Yeah, it was easier because we were with an NFL team. The other thing that was shocking is just how quickly you can get to these places. You think about Germany and you think about Scotland, England, and you're thinking that you're going to be taking these long, super long flights, and it's just a train ride. It's like a couple of hours of a train ride of these bullet trains, and you're there. Or again, if you do fly, it just takes maybe 50 minutes or so to get to that next place. But it was an experience. It was my very first time actually going to an airport, and you're seeing guys walk around with machine guns like that.
Right.
Was shocking. I was like, well, and you always have that feeling of, hey, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. But you feel like you're guilty of something when you're seeing somebody walk around with a shotgun or machine guns. But it was fun. I enjoyed every minute over there, but I enjoyed being back home much more.
Sure. Yeah. The value of that. I guess the Bourne Supremacy or the Bourne Ultimatum, those movies that came out where you're in different parts of the world and it's all suspense, and every minute you're white knuckling this thing, and you got to be. I've been there. It's not that bad. Come on, you're a veteran, so to speak, right? You've been there, a cagey old veteran.
In Scotland, it's funny. Scotland is just like Seattle. People say, Scotland, it rains a lot, and it does. It rain and poured in our game, but the thing I remember most, we were losing that game by a touchdown, or I think 4 points, and we just threw a Hail Mary, and for whatever reason, something told me sprint down there as fast as you can. And the ball just got tipped right into my hands, and we ended up winning that game. It was the craziest. It was a crazy. And those are the things that as a kid, even sometimes as an adult, you just dream about, like having a Hail Mary or just like catching the game-winning touchdown like on the last second. It was a lot of fun.
And how many guys are not in the right place at the right time?
Right.
And you are. And did you get the Gatorade tossed on you? Were they still doing that?
No, I didn't, but I did get the football. I got the game balls. I got it.
I love it. Now, there are certain parts of Scotland that they're speaking English, but you can't understand a word they're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And that's also the same with England as well.
Yeah.
They'll ask you, it's like, can I get some water? And they're like, would you like a bottle? And I was like, oh, what? I was like, they're like, a bottle. I was like, bottle? They're like, yeah, a bottle. And so it was just kind of like, you just have to like listen out to, what they're saying.
Yeah. I won't use the one, but a cigarette and is a different word. How you use the bathroom is different. Did you take the tube while you were there? What are you talking about? No, the subway.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's and just and same with Scotland. Ireland, I'm sure, is similar in that for an American going over there, you almost need to think about what you just heard before you can react to it, because it is a distinct, unique difference the way that they articulate versus the verbalization we have.
Right. Yeah.
But you enjoyed that process. The season ends, and then what, Juan?
So the season ends after that, and then my first son, my oldest son, Aubrey, he was on the way. So I said, it's one thing to try to live out and chase this dream, but not to the point to where you're getting in debt and or picking up and moving every couple of weeks. So I just got into the workforce, and so that was in June. Aubrey was born in December, so I just wanted to make sure I had stability, insurance, especially having a newborn. So that was just kind of my focus from there, and I just have been in the workplace ever since then.
That's a tough transition for a lot of guys. Do you think that you were prepared for that mentally, physically, emotionally, or was it something that I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to do something? Talk a little bit about just how that process ended up working for you.
Well, it just it was really just growing up, and am I going to continue to chase a dream, or am I going to be a man and take care of my family? And so that was it was a no-brainer for me. Getting ready to have a newborn and providing, that was just, that was easy.
Yeah. Well, you made a comment earlier, and please forgive me, I'm not trying to dwell on it, but you said, I couldn't lose the weight. I went up to about 212 pounds. I ran a 4.6, and I've never run a 4.6 before. Was there times after the combine and Amsterdam and the Frankfurt experience that you got down to a 4.2, 4.3, 4.4 again? Or was it just, I'm going to be a bigger guy? That's just the way I was made.
Yeah, that's why I just, and I remember when I was at Cincinnati and they said, hey, what are your thoughts on putting on more weight, and we getting you up to like the 250, 260, and then you turn into a tight end. And I'm like, if I could barely run at 212, there's no way I'm going to be able to run at run at like 250, 260. Yeah. So it just got to the point where I was like, what, I don't want to put all this additional weight on my body. I'd rather just get it off, because I'm really just used to being a skinny kid for all of my life until, I get on this creatine and I'm, pumping iron, and, I think my bench got up to like 315. I was doing like 225, like, 10 to 12 times easy. But I never lifted weights coming up. Never. That wasn't anything that I ever wanted to do. So I just got to a point where I was like, what, I'm not gonna, especially after coming back from Amsterdam, I was like, I'm not going to continue to put myself through this. And it's a grind. I mean, it is a grind.
I would imagine, and please forgive me if Shannon Sharp wasn't playing at that time. I believe he was. And so they're probably thinking, hey, you can be like Shannon. But in my opinion, Shannon at 235 or 40, give or take, I mean, he was chiseled because he had a really small waist,
yes,
shoulders, strong guy. at 235, you would have felt like a blob, I guess, right? You know,
Oh,
and I'm not, please forgive me. I'm not saying
Well,
you
and I have I'm 6'1", and so it's a difference. I think Shannon Sharp is a lot taller than that, but again, like you said, he's just very chiseled. I could barely move at that weight, and I was in the gym constantly. I got with Chip Smith, who works with a lot of NFL guys. Chip Smith was fantastic, and
Isn't he amazing? He's
he
amazing.
is, and he worked me out, and the stuff that I was lifting, the cleans and the the squats, like I felt like I was a big time body. My arms were just huge, and I just couldn't move. It was just hard for me to move.
Yeah. There's a difference between power, which you would need at the tight end position because of the blocking and the essentials of that, versus the fragility, if you will, or the fluidity that you would have to have as a wide receiver. And you would have lost that had you gained any more weight, right?
Big time.
Yeah. Well, Chip ends up being somebody that I think you run into a little bit later in your life when your second son has his experience at Buford. Shall we go there next? Do you want to talk a little bit about Buford?
Oh yeah. So it's funny. I had an opportunity to coach him since he was 6 years old, and he played. He was running back up until he was 8 years old, and then he moved to quarterback, and he just kind of took off from there. And after his 8th grade year, he actually didn't want to play football anymore. He was big time into lacrosse, and I didn't want to push him. I was one of those types. My older son, he played 2 years, 7th and 8th grade, and he said, "Dad, I just don't want to play football anymore." I was like, "Whatever you want to do, I'm supporting you. That's it." And but Ashton, he decided, "Hey, I don't want to play anymore. I want to play lacrosse." And it was his mom. She said, "Can you just give me 1 year? If you give me 1 year, and you decide after your freshman year you don't want to play, you don't have to play again." And he was blessed to
hold on. This is very important for me, and the reason I'm stopping is not again. This is most moms are afraid of Junior getting hurt, and they don't want him to play football. They encourage lacrosse, and you're saying that this was the exact opposite in your household.
Yep, absolutely. It was the opposite. I mean, obviously, I wanted him to play football, but I was going to support him either way. And
Sure.
It's funny. So my wife is from Massachusetts, where that football is not big up in the Northeast. And then when she came down and for played volleyball at Georgia, and she got a taste of like Southern football, she just absolutely fell in love with it. And then of course, too, we're watching him play since he was 6 years old all the way up until 8th grade. And then all of a sudden he just kind of wants to give it up. She was just like, "All I'm asking is just 1 year. After that year, if you don't like it, then that's fine." And so his head coach, his name is Coach Gilbert, Sean Gilbert, and he's actually who I coach flag football with right now. He and I played football together at Norcross. So he was a split end wide receiver and I was a slot receiver. So we actually played next to each other.
Sure.
Ashton loved his freshman experience so much because of Coach Gilbert, to where he got a renewed passion to play football. And we were ecstatic. We were excited about that. He goes and then plays the freshman year. They go undefeated. He plays his sophomore year. He plays JV. They go undefeated, and they get all the way. So then he obviously they move him up to varsity, and they get all the way to the state championship. And the starting quarterback wasn't doing so hot, almost threw a pick, and they put Ashton in, and he goes on to lead them to a state championship and ends up getting the MVP. And then he did it again the next year, state championship MVP. And then he did it the next year, state championship and an MVP. So it was cool to see this kid that just said, I don't want to play football anymore, to going to win 3 state championships and being the MVP of those 3 state championships.
Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Good decision.
Yeah.
Way to go. The program itself, now I'm familiar with it. Jess Simpson was the head coach when my eldest son was there. It's 24/7. I mean, they have literally every minute during the summer, the fall, even the spring, chart it out for what you're going to do. It's a different level. But you know what? 3 state championships at that level. What classification was Ashton in during those championships? Was it
So
5?
he did it classification 4, then 5, and then 6.
Yeah, which is at the time 6 was the highest that Georgia.
7 was the highest. That was the year that Travis Hunter and that Collins Hill group won, and then we were 6. But okay. I mean, they were saying that year that the 6A was probably the toughest.
Okay.
Classification.
I know that they don't have 7A now. Please forgive me. I needed to be clarified, and I'm glad that you did that for me. I appreciate it. But it's great football, and I can imagine for Ashton, even from his sophomore year, he would see coaches come on campus, much like his father did at Norcross, and they'd be going to visit with somebody else. And I would imagine every once in a while, someone would want to shake his hand or give a business card, or say, hey, can I get your phone number so I can stay in touch with you? What was that like for you as a dad, getting to see that passed down to your son?
It was crazy. It's, to see your kid being recruited, and as a dad, the only thing I'm thinking is, I just want your school to be paid for. I just think it's cool for a kid.
You're selfish. You're so selfish. You're watching your wallet, Juan.
But it's cool for a kid to come out of college and be debt free. So that was my biggest thing. And then everything else on top of you just getting an offer for a scholarship and get your school paid for, everything else is awesome. So just the fact that you get a chance to do what you love and play football, and just to have him come home and be like, Dad, such and such reach out to me and this team. And then I just said, hey, be prepared, because your phone's going to be ran off the hook nonstop. And of course it didn't at the beginning, but then when it started, it was pretty heavy.
All right. I got 1,000 questions for you. Was there any guy in particular that he comes home and says, Dad, I got to meet so-and-so today, where you were kind of, what? That's awesome, man.
Obviously Kirby. I mean, he got an opportunity to meet like Kirby and Saban and all of those guys. And I was like, tell me about these guys, and even Ryan Day. But he was even saying just how short Kirby was and how short Nick Saban was. I was like, really? Yeah, because I don't know, for whatever reason you have an idea of them being a certain height, but he was like, no, man, they're like super short, and he was like kind of tall at the time too. So that was he was just excited, just Ryan, all these Ryan Day, all these guys that he sees on TV, that he's getting an opportunity to actually meet in person and shake their hand.
Well, now your relationship with Kirby and UGA, talk a little bit about that.
We played together. So we played together 2 years. So it was kind of crazy. So Will Muschamp played 2 years ahead of me, but we played together for 2 years. And then there's me, and then there's Kirby for 2 years. And we go at it, go at each other in practice one-on-ones. And it's funny because, when I get an opportunity to tell the story, anytime he lined up against me, I was like, oh, yay, this is exciting. Because, I would, usually get the best of that. But
you'd whoop up on Kirby, and he may not see it the same way.
He doesn't see it the same way. But, I mean, again, too, he was a safety. I was a receiver. So that was a lot easier for me to get the best of him than it was, a regular defensive back.
Well, Larry Bird and anybody from a trash talking perspective, but especially Magic, the two of them getting together in the same room, we'll see a completely different way of looking at the same.
Exactly.
From a
well, but I they still have those tapes, so go pull those.
Someone's got them. There's someone's got them.
The sky doesn't lie.
Yes, right, and you got to do it. You mentioned something about the phone. Bobby Butler, who I played with here in Atlanta with the Falcons, his son Bryce, oddly enough, a Norcross graduate. So you're familiar with Bryce and his history. Yeah. I asked Bobby once, I said, tell me what the recruiting process is like for you as a dad. He goes, my gosh, the phone that these kids have now, it is always either ringing or pinging or something. They're getting a text, they're getting a call, they're getting some sort of notification. And I said, what was the way that you were able to handle that with Bryce? And he said, Bryce ended up committing to SC right before the season began his senior year. Mm-hmm. I said, what's the good, bad, and the ugly with that? He goes, the good is the phone shut off. He could focus. He could have fun again, because there were times where it wasn't fun.
Yep.
He said he had a great time. He enjoyed his senior year. he let loose, and everything worked out well for him to make that decision early. I said, "What's the bad news of that?" And he goes, "Well, actually, he had a very good season." And Bobby went to Florida State. He wanted Bryce to go to Florida State, but because he had already made the commitment, the Seminoles backed off. And so he really never got a chance to do that. So there are some good, some bad, and some ugly. What was it like for you observing what Ashton was going through in his decision?
Well, it was, it was a lot of pressure on him for these schools to say, hey, we want you to commit. Like, we want you to commit like right now. And, he's kind of, one of those guys that he'll listen to it and, he'll take it all in, but it kind of stresses him out a little bit. But he did the same exact thing for Stanford. He committed right before his senior year, and it was great. Now, the good was, again, he enjoyed his senior season. The bad is the phone never stopped ringing. I mean, it was still ringing, hey, all the way up until there was right in the tunnel as he was coming out for the state championship game. There was a couple of schools that said, hey, I know signing days in 2 days after the state championship. Please just give us an opportunity. Please just either come see us or just give us an opportunity to talk on the phone. So it never stops.
I'll call it poaching. He made a commitment, right? He says, "I'm going to be a Cardinal."
Yep.
They're in Palo Alto, and there are folks that go, "I don't care. I'm going to talk to you anyways."
Yep. We want you to, stay home closer. You don't have to go all the way out there.
Now, what was Stanford like for him when he took the trip out in a way that you go, "Man, this is going to be a great decision"?
I didn't want him to go out there at all. You're halfway across the country, and as a parent, if something happens to your kid, you can't just hop in the car and go. Like, you have to take like a 4 or 5 hour flight out there. So on his way out there, I'm sitting there on the plane going, I hope he just hates it. I just absolutely hope he hates it.
It's one of the cleanest campuses you'll ever see. There's no bubble. It's almost like Buford's High School. It's unbelievable. So
you get on campus, and I tell people, it's like angels were singing. You hear harps. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing out there. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, if he's going out here, I totally get it. We'll support him. And it's also, and it wasn't just the campus too, like the recruiting is a little bit different for Stanford, at least, with the coaching staff that he had with Coach Shaw, is they do more recruiting the parents than they actually do the kid.
Really?
And they were more so like, how did you raise Ash? Like, what happens in this scenario? What happens in that? And so that's how they were able just to continue the process. I mean, they have, like, I guess, questions that they ask, and if you don't answer them a certain way, because they want a certain caliber of kid on campus. And then they also kind of talk about how they do their recruiting process. They say, a lot of these schools, they just take this wide net and they just cast it out and, just try to see what they can find, just kind of filter that. And they said, no, we fly fish. We go, and if we go to a school, there's only one person that we're looking at, and it may just be just one person in that area.
Yeah.
So, they were looking at how, are we disciplinarians? What are, and also too, they look at our other kids. So they looked at my older son. They look at my daughter. Like, what are they into? And they, what type of a family structure do we have? And then that's when they go and pull the trigger on who they want to bring into the university.
Well, I would imagine Stanford, Vanderbilt, Notre Dame, there's a few other, let's say some Ivy League schools that, you got to be able to hit the books. And that's an important factor that has to be considered along with the athleticism of it and whatever sport you're playing. But was that an interesting perspective for you? Or was that, wait a second, these elites are trying to, they're going way too far. Ultimately, we need to win on Saturday, and my kid's going to help wherever he goes to make that happen.
No, you know what? It made sense to me.
Okay, yeah.
So one of the things, a couple of things. So one of the things at Stanford, at that time, because it was COVID, all of these schools dropped the SAT. Stanford never dropped it. And Stanford said, in order for you to get here, you have to have at least an 1100.
Okay.
So that was one of the things. And then what really hit home on that recruiting trip is they said to Ashton, they said, if you want to be a millionaire, come to Stanford. Whether you go to the NFL or whether you get out into the workforce and you're gonna have an opportunity to be a millionaire. And I was just like, wow. And then they break down to they don't have that, the athletic department, they don't give out scholarships. They're just endowments. So it's people that have graduated from Stanford actually pay for a football player's entire scholarship. And Ashton's scholarship worth was $391,000.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm thinking to myself, there's somebody from Stanford that graduated that just gave $391,000 for my kid to play football. Holy moly. So it was, man, you go there and you make sure you get your degree from Stanford.
Yeah. The success, breeding success, and the love of the school and the indebtedness, I guess you would call it,
Yes.
to the program, not just from a football perspective, but just, there's a lot to that, isn't there? It hits you in a different way. It does me right now. My quarterback, my senior year of high school, his name is Steve Cottrell. He ended up going to Stanford. He had to back up some guy named John Elwood.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he walked on as a football player. He was a baseball guy. And they had a half scholarship for him ready, or an endowment for him. But because he played football and he made the team, there were 7 quarterbacks there, and he was number 8.
Oh, wow.
On the depth chart the first day. He ended up in the 2.5, 3 weeks of summer camp before their home first road. Well, their first game was at Ohio State. He made the trip, so he was the 3rd string quarterback. He beat 5 other guys out.
Wow.
And long story short is they worked out a financial deal for him so that he could play both, and neither one would be affected fully, but partially both were affected, and it worked out for them. So Stanford does do things a little bit differently, uniquely. It certainly was an impression on you and your family for the fact that, nothing else. It sure struck me just a minute ago. If you want to be a millionaire, if you want to be a rich, successful person, it's not just about the money, but we're going to teach you how to make it and how to keep it. That's a very unique experience.
Yeah. The alumni network and everything that they do to help you to become successful. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, Ashton goes there, and 3 years later, he's done? Are you kidding me?
He graduates. He graduated in 3 years, which is.
Did you send any pizza money or anything? He didn't have a time to go do anything. Couldn't see a movie.
It was funny when he knew how close he was. He just buckled down and said, "Hey, I'm going to do it." So he and one of his roommates, they both graduated in 3 years. But what was unique was his roommate got there in January, so he early enrolled and then graduated on time in 3 years. And then Ashton ended up getting there in June, so he came 6 months later, but still they both graduated at the same time.
Wow. So when they get together on Thanksgiving, there's going to be some bragging rights.
Oh, yeah. I finished, I came in 6 months later and finished at the same time.
Goodness gracious. So he's done. Now tell me about some of the games. We're looking at a couple pictures of him now on the screen. And, from an athletic perspective, the Pac is disappearing. They go into the Big 12, all these things going on. But yet, what was it like for you watching him play at that level?
Oh, it was tough. I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, he, they didn't have a line. They didn't have a running back. So he was pretty much he and there was another guy, Alec Eierminer, who went to the Tennessee Titans. It was those two were basically trying to do all that they could. It was a unique situation last year. I don't think I've ever heard of this in college football, but the running backs did not score a single touchdown last year. It was all the backup quarterback. He did a lot of the wildcat, and then Ashton ran a couple in, but they did not. The running backs did not have a single rushing touchdown. Also, the running back, I don't think a single running back ever had over 100 yards rushing in a game. And the only one that had over 100 yards rushing was Ashton. So he was, it was tough. But the great thing about it, what he learned is that he had the ability to run. When he was in high school, he never ran. He was just a pure pocket passer. And so when he gets out to Stanford, because the line was bad and they didn't have a running game, and it was tough on him. He was forced to scramble and get out, and then just kind of add a little bit more to his game other than just being a pocket passer.
Wow. I hear everything you're saying, and I also was thinking in the back of my mind, Caleb Williams has no offensive line with the Bears, or at least he didn't in the past couple of years.
Yep.
And his senior year at SC, even though he had won the Heisman the year before, he was set hut. He gets the ball. He has about a half a second, maybe to hit 1 or 3 steps, and then he's got to get rid of the ball, or else he's running for his life. Was there any similarity with
a lot? It was very, very, very similar. And so the other issue, so his sophomore year, and we've got a stable of backs. You had Emmitt Smith's son, E.J. Smith. He was one of the running backs his sophomore year. Ashton was the second leading rusher on the team. The first leading rusher was the backup Wildcat quarterback.
Okay.
Last year, Ashton rushed for more yards than the starting running back and the backup. So, and then it was a lot of it was just a kind of jailbreak. It was you get the ball and it was basically save yourselves, like run for your life, but it made them tougher. And sometimes you just have to go through that in order to better yourself. But if I'm looking at one game, you had it up there on the screen, was that Colorado game where they were down 29-0 at the half, and it's crazy. I'm looking at my wife like I'm ready to go. Like I'm just like it's halftime. We're getting absolutely hammered. I was like I'm ready to go, and then so they come down and they score a touchdown. I was like okay, at least they scored. At least they made it respectable. They go and score another touchdown. I'm like, okay, this is looking a little bit better. We score again, and then we score again, and next thing you know, like we're kicking a field goal to go into overtime, and then we ended up winning the game. And it was probably one of the best feelings as a dad that you could ever have. That's history. And they just talk about in the history of Stanford, like they've never come back from a 29-0 deficit. And to do that at Colorado with Deion Sanders and Shador and all those guys, It made it even better.
Yeah. There's a certain good job, we scored, to where there's a depth in even your wife's voice or another woman that's nearby where she goes, we're going to win this game,
right,
and we're going to do it right in front of all these. I mean, that had to be a thrill and obviously a very unique experience. A record breaker, in spite of the fact that your offensive line, look out, tell everybody what a lookout block is.
Exactly.
A lookout block is when an offensive lineman, and I've done it as a tight end, misses the guy at the line of scrimmage who's trying to rush the quarterback, and all you can do is go, uh-oh, and you tell the quarterback, look out, my guy he's gonna get you. It's the worst feeling. It's like having a ball go between your legs in left field. I call it the run of shame, that you got to go get the ball and then throw it back in. A lookout block it's horrible. Well, here's another shot that I want to make sure we get a chance to look at of the family, of course, and then
there's E.J. Smith, 22.
Yeah. Yep, yeah, great player and nice number too. You wore that number a little earlier. You told us about that. Things started changing for you though. NIL and portal and all kinds of other things. If I'm not mistaken, Dad has to be a little pleased with where Ashton has decided to take his talents, not to South Beach, but a little further west, certainly a lot closer for you.
Oh, it's 2 hours door to door from our house to his apartment is 2 hours, or even our house to the stadium. And, you talk about things coming full circle. Like this is the biggest and best joy for me ever. Like, I'm sitting there thinking as a little kid, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to play quarterback for Auburn. because like I said, I love Randy Campbell. I wanted to go to Auburn and be number 14 and play quarterback. And so to see my son get an opportunity to go and play quarterback is, I can't even describe, what it's like. You talk about getting chill bumps and just screaming War Eagle and doing all that. It's just, it's amazing.
What has it been like so far with spring ball and summer camp hasn't started yet, but with guys working out there and all that other, you get a chance to kind of visit with the coaches. Is the offensive or defensive line better at Auburn than it was at Stanford last year?
Oh, that's the very first thing he said is, Dad, you're not even going to believe us. He's like, the offensive line is just unbelievable. He said they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. And so he didn't get an opportunity to participate in spring because he was still doing school at Stanford. But
sure,
he has been participating in the workouts, and he's just like the everything is just bigger, better, faster, stronger. The coaches are just absolutely amazing. We took our official visit there. I mean, you can't go to Auburn and not fall in love with those coaches. I mean, they really care about the kids. They're amazing. The campus is amazing. The new weight room facility and the indoor practice facility they have is just top notch. So
right now it's not 98 there; it's only 94.
Probably so. That's probably what it is. But it's just so cool. He walks different, talks different. It's just got an awesome smile on his face, and he just feels like he's home. He talks about the quarterback room, and he's like, Dad, our quarterback room was close at Stanford, but he goes, these guys are just amazing. He goes, we're really, really close. I mean, they had, I want to say Jackson Arnold cooked steaks the other night, and they're all over at Jackson Arnold's eating steaks, all the quarterbacks. And I was just like, that's just so amazing.
Yeah. And from a competitive perspective, I would think that, non-Power 5 versus, let's say, the Big 12. I'm not debasing that at all, but Big 10 and SEC, last couple of years, he's going to be going against the best of the best. And if there is a chance for him to get to play on Sundays, he's going to get the closest experience to what that's going to be like at that level. That has to be an interesting, unique challenge for you as a dad to be able to monitor that, but still know that, hey, you know what? He's got to be able to go through the fire. And This is one of the best tests. He's going to get LSU, A&M. He's going to get Mississippi. He's going to get, of course, Roll Tide. He's going to get a couple of Eastern
Georgia
SEC schools. Goodness gracious. I mean, this is top of the line football here.
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing as a dad is him getting an opportunity to be coached by great coaches and just teach him just the fundamentals. And it's funny because his last couple of years, he was not taught fundamentals and just different things. So if all else, just him having that opportunity to just really be coached and really just be taught how to be a quarterback, and especially a quarterback in this league and what it's going to take. And even from a competition standpoint, the one thing that's great about this quarterback room is no matter who comes out on top, the competition that these guys are going to give each other and the leadership that these guys are going to give each other and the pushing and the support that they're going to give each other, I think puts Auburn in a great situation to be a successful program this year.
Tell me a little bit about the specifics of quarterbacking has fascinated me, because not just because of Tom Brady, TB12 and all that, but it goes back to other things. He would spend a summer just working on his left arm, whether or not it should be straight up in the air or what, just so that, because when he pulls, you're going to push with your right arm, you pull with your left. Tom House is the quarterback whisperer. Tom House is the guy who caught Hank Aaron's 715th home run in the bullpen of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. He was a member of the Braves.
Right.
He turned into the quarterback whisperer, and he said something that was very interesting to me. He goes, I don't see people. I don't see personalities. I see a skeleton. whether it's you, me, or anyone. I just look at the bone structure of a way a guy looks when he throws, and I try to make that as efficient as I possibly can. Whether you open up your hips because they're too closed, whether you got to close them because they're too open, your follow through and all that. A lot of really specific stuff, Juan, that Ashton is just now learning is out there, and he can start to take advantage of it. Am I anywhere in the ballpark and where I'm
100% correct? And if you go and look at the drops that he was taking at Stanford versus just a standard quarterback drop, or even like just the ball delivery, and that's what he was telling me. He's like, Dad, they're working on on my base and shortening it up and widen it here and being able to do different things. And so one of the biggest things about being a quarterback is anybody can throw a football, right? And it's a matter of, can you stay in the pocket and make good reads and deliver a football while all of this stuff is going on around you? Most people can't do that.
Right.
And then once you add in the additional mechanics that you were just talking about, that the House is talking about, being a quarterback whisperer and doing all that, if you put all of those together, it's just amazing. And I think, especially now, Ashton is getting that coaching. I mean, can he stand in the pocket and just, tune out everything and make deliver accurate passes? Yes, he can. But now, he's getting the mechanics part added to it, and being able to make those quicker decisions and being able to deliver the football.
Yeah. And doing it with a guy in your face, whether it be a safety, a defensive end, or the best defensive tackle, a guy that's going to go number one in the draft, at the SEC level, or whatever they play during their non-conference games. All of that coming up. Juan, I'm going to put it this way. It's 3rd and 7. Are you going to dump it off to the guy that's only going to get 4 yards? Or are you going to take the risk and be able to do it in your sleep in front of 106,000 people there in Neyland Stadium, and be able to do it over and over and over again, and then just through the game and get us to where we can win? Auburn, I know, is just going to be screaming for somebody to be able to do that for them, so that they can be highly competitive again.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Auburn has been down for quite some time, and so it's about time for them to make that jump, and they've got the pieces. So it's just a matter of, can we put it all together and go out there and tackle this season.
And I would imagine there's an ease, if you will, or the burden isn't as great because he's already graduated. He's just going to be taking extra classes. He can work on his master's for free, so to speak, and kind of be loose and have fun, almost like what you would have on your senior year of high school.
Yeah, he's gonna have an opportunity to really just kind of enjoy college life. He's done the hard part, and he's done the hard part at a tough university. And so just to come here and then focus on football, like I said, take a couple of classes. I think he may, one of the classes he may take is golf. He's really big into golf. So
really,
I was like, man, take a golf class. Oh, he's big time. That is one of his passions is golf. So but again, just to have fun and enjoy himself, be a leader. No matter who's going to be taking snaps, support, be a leader, and be an Auburn Tiger, and that's what he's excited to do.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many neat. Now, Toomer's Corner at the end of a game with all the toilet paper being thrown on it and the adult beverages that are around.
Yes.
Wait till later. They right now focus on what you need to do. Who do they open up with? Do you know?
Baylor, at Baylor.
Okay.
Going to be August 29th on Friday night.
And I'm going to imagine you're going to be somewhere in Waco. You right?
Yes, indeed.
This has to be an amazing time for you and your family for obvious reasons, and just you getting a chance to enjoy it as well and be there. Now, are you the dad that wears his jersey, and you need to let everybody know that?
I'm not. It's different when you're a quarterback dad. Like, because again, during those games, that they, again, like the Colorado game where when they beat Louisville, they beat Syracuse, last year. Yeah, you want to be like, yeah, but then of course you're going to have those games that you don't do so well, and they're looking at like, who is that guy? Why has he got that jersey on? So,
why is his kid not throwing to my kid?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't.
We don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't like to do that. I just, and I'm kind of quiet. I don't like to yell and scream and go crazy and do all that. Because I don't ever want him to be like, Dad, I heard you were in the stadium acting crazy.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that. So
yeah, I got that this weekend from my son in his tournament. He goes, Dad, you need to be quiet when I'm coming up to the plate. And I had to respond.
Yeah.
I'm only telling you stuff that I think you would need to know going into this at bat. So I've got to be very careful the way I listen. And now let me ask you this from a parent perspective. The quarterbacks always take care of the offensive line. Does the quarterback dad have to take care and buy all the beer for the offensive linemen's dads?
Shh. Let's not start
I haven't heard that. I don't know. Just want to see.
I don't want that to be a trend.
Hey, if you beat Bama, then that's a
now that's a different story. We beat Georgia and Bama, then I'll buy all the beer that they.
Geez, no kidding. Well, we'll start with Baylor. Part of the thing that we wanted to make sure that we mentioned is, you and your life, but going into your son's life and your family, not everybody is willing to do that. So I appreciate that. But, how does this happen for you? You said you got in the insurance business when you were younger. You're not doing insurance anymore, but talk a little bit about the professional career and how you've been able to excel and take your degree from the University of Georgia and turn that into something that has been a much more profitable way for you.
Yeah, I got into pharmaceuticals in 2003. So I've been in the industry for about 22 years. I've been with AstraZeneca for 21. It's just been amazing. You get out there, you go and you're helping patients and you're helping them get better, and you're enjoying your job all at the same time. You get to meet a whole lot of new people, and the biggest thing is you have great teammates, you have great leaders that you work for, and then you go in and then you treat the staff and everybody just like they're the doctor, like they're the number one people, and it just everybody wins, and so I've been blessed to do that, and I'm now a leader. So I have 10 reps. I cover Georgia and South Carolina, so I get an opportunity to go and go see my people over in South Carolina. I really like to work with them when they're in not Myrtle Beach, but Hilton Head.
Yeah, I guess you would, right?
I try to go above and beyond to make sure I'm servicing that area, because I think it needs a lot of work.
You may need to be there more often than one, right? Do you bring Ashton's clubs with you while you're there, just in case you may?
Just in case. I mean, you never know. Like you may just be walking down the street and a golf game breaks out, and you don't want to not be prepared. So that's the biggest thing.
It broke out, and so I had to be there to make sure.
I would say defend myself. That's what it is.
Well, AstraZeneca, I would imagine from a sales perspective, or at least, you're communicating with different people. Like you mentioned the doctors, for example, or the staff. Now, even though you're not seeing them every day, maybe weekly or quarterly, monthly, but every day's a little bit different, because you're always seeing and visiting with other people. And I imagine when you're helping people feel better and be better, they're glad to see you as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and especially when you're genuine and when you care. So it's funny, you talk about baseball. One of my reps, she was actually in Hoover. Her son plays baseball, but her son also plays with another one of our doctor's sons. So just being able to have those different relationships and really care about the people that you work with or work for is amazing. A lot of the doctors that I call on, a lot of the nurses, they're my Facebook friends. So we keep up with each other. We wish each other happy birthdays, or if I get an opportunity to go see their kids play at something, if I'm in the area, I'm more than happy to. So it's not a quid pro quo. It's like you have genuine relationships, and these are relationships that have lasted for like years and years and years. So that's the rewarding part of the job that I get an opportunity to do.
Well, some of the Facebook friends that I've had want to show me pictures of what they've had for dinner. If it's a steak and potatoes, and I get really jealous because, I didn't have steak and potatoes. I had French fries and I had a chicken sandwich.
Right.
You get to enjoy the bigger and the better. Tell me a little bit about what the SEC has meant to you in terms of being a part of it as a player, and now getting to be a part of it as a dad and getting to see that, and just how fierce the rivalries are. You're going to be seeing it in a completely different atmosphere this year when you're going to have tailgating experiences and pregame get-togethers near the press box, and just it's important, and you get to be a part of it in two different levels of your life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It just, you hear that, it just means more to have an opportunity to play at Georgia and play, these amazing teams, and going to the Tennessees, the Floridas, and all of these in the SEC. I consider it the best of the best. And one, I played in it, but I also got an opportunity to witness games in the Pac-12, to also witness games in the ACC, because Stanford was in the ACC last year. But the level of competition and, being in the SEC is just completely different. Because I almost want to say, unless you grow up a diehard fan of an Ohio State or a Michigan, most of these kids will say, I want to play in the SEC, because that's where the competition is. And so having my son get an opportunity to experience what SEC football is all about it's just cool. Especially when we play that first, that first SEC game, it's going to be crazy.
Plus how it's changed over the years. When you were playing, Missouri was not yet in. Nope. They end up winning the East, the first 2 or 3 years that they were part of it, right? Now you've got OU and Texas. A&M, of course, is a part of it now. It's expanded. It's got even bigger. And I think the Texas edition really establishes it from a media perspective as you got to catch us, other conferences. We don't have to chase anybody else down. It's as Ashton said, bigger, faster, stronger. I think they're quicker, and I think they're better coached in so many different ways. It's just the place to be.
Well, think about it for Texas. Texas being in the SEC. Think about how many of those Texas kids wanted to go and play in the SEC. And now that Texas is in the SEC, that gives them an opportunity to keep a lot of those guys home.
I agree.
That works out. That works out great for them, and and OU as well, because now people are saying, "Hey, I want to play, in the SEC." I mean, kids coming out of school now, they have two objectives. Their number one is, "Hey, I want to play Power 4," but back then it was Power 5. I want to play Power 4, and then it's I want to play in the SEC. In a perfect world, they're going to play Power 4 SEC football team, and anything else, outside of that, again, unless now, of course, we talked about NIL. When the money's involved, it's a different story.
Well, if I'm a Texas coach, and I'm generalizing here, obviously, I don't think I need to go out. If I'm at a Longhorn, I don't have to go outside of Austin, Dallas, maybe Houston. I can fill up my roster with double the amount of players that I would need to. And that doesn't include the great player that comes out of Odessa, or the one that comes out of San Marcos, let's say, or San Antonio. And you have all these other kids that, as you just mentioned, would want to play at the highest level anyways, and are begging, but if they're not being recruited, they can only bring in about 24 on average a year, right? So I think it's even bigger and better for them, and I think it also helps out A&M being there for obvious reasons. And hey, Texas didn't want you. We sure do here at A&M. We'll take you. They don't have to, but they do. They go outside. They'll take a kid from Louisiana. They will certainly pilfer anyone from Oklahoma because of the rivalry there. They can go out to California or Oregon, Washington. They have done what Alabama has been able to do for, it seems like, centuries. And they get the massive appeal, plus being in the SEC. I think it's going to pay massive dividends for them.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And that just makes UGA, for you and your alumni, we got to work a little bit harder to make sure that doesn't.
Especially when you're trying to recruit out of Texas.
Yeah. Does it help Kentucky and Vanderbilt and, let's say, Mississippi State, or does it hurt them?
With Texas being in the SEC, you mean?
Texas and Oklahoma, yeah.
Yes, it does, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Because, again, these are teams that were originally in the Big 12. And, you almost kind of look at it, when they were power, or, when it was all the Power Five, and you were just like, okay, yeah, this team is the Big 12 champions, but do you really look at and or respect the Big 12 champion? So even if Texas won the Big 12, I think that, the committee would rather put in a undefeated SEC team and a one-loss SEC team over a Big 12 champion any day.
Yeah, when you think about the money in the market, the television market, and who's going to travel, that takes care of itself. If there's anyone that I think has taken advantage of the success that the SEC has had and tried to catch up, it's Kentucky for me. You can tell me that Vanderbilt, yes, because especially in other sports, their baseball program is off the charts. They're amazing. LSU baseball, obviously, 8 championships, they're amazing too. But I think Mississippi State has caught up faster. Mississippi is beginning because Bama goes to the national championship. The split that they have amongst the conference has allowed additional monies to come in that weren't there before. When you were at Georgia, you didn't play for Mark Richt, but I know that he complained all the time, hey, we need to have an indoor facility here on the campus, and he never got it. Kirby gets there, and they break ground for it within a couple of weeks from him getting there. They'll find the money to do that. But from a competitive standpoint, isn't it also true that the SEC runner-ups, the Kentuckys, Vanderbilt, like I said, maybe Auburn, the facilities that they have now with the extra money that's come in, they're second to none.
Oh, it's unreal. So I go, I get an opportunity to go up to Georgia from time to time, and their weight room and everything they have is amazing. And then I go to Auburn, and I'm like, wow, their weight room and everything is absolutely amazing. Same thing, like you said, with Vanderbilt versus I remember Ashton and I went to a Duke camp, and they went and showed us the weight room, and we were like, gosh, this looks like, my high school back in 1990, like we were rusted weights, and it was just bad compared to all the things that and it's funny too, because you say that a lot of people complain about Vanderbilt because they're like, what are they bringing in? And then they get an opportunity to share in all of this money and better their stadium, better their facilities. Are they really pulling their weight? So that's funny that you mentioned that.
Well, they've got a ways to go. But again, from a Stanford, from a Harvard, from a Notre Dame perspective, they're an academic first, and they have not sacrificed that. They've made sure that, we are going to be a school first and an athletic team, no matter what it is, second. That's just my opinion, the way Vanderbilt has run that. Are there any buildings at Georgia that exist now that didn't exist when you were there? Going, hey, what the heck was it? You know what I mean?
The dorm that I stayed in is completely gone.
Okay.
It was an athletic dorm. We called it the MAC. It is completely gone. I think it's like a parking garage right now.
Yeah.
So that when that's gone, and it actually looks completely different. Even like the facilities, like where the indoor. I was in there a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to Bobo, and I said, okay, help me understand where we are right now, because it's just not making any sense. And he's like, all right, remember that those field goals, they were down there, and this was an extra, some great, so he had to like turn me around and show me. And then I was like, okay, it completely makes sense, because it doesn't look anything close to what it looked like when I was there.
Right. Yeah, some of the changes. And then again, the money is so dramatically larger than what it used to be. From a national perspective, I won't go into any specifics, but you're a part of that with Ashton.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to enter the portal. I don't believe he was going to leave Stanford because he had graduated. But talk a little bit about how those changes, the NIL aspect of it, the portal, like I said, coaches leaving, like Nick Saban says, I can't deal with this anymore, and I'm just going to walk away. Where are we in terms of your opinion of college football and the health of the game?
It's crazy, because like now it's almost like it's a free for all. And my thing is, you'll see kids that will enter the portal and they'll play at 4 different schools, and so then it's kind of like where do you call home? and our thing with Ashton was, listen, if you want to enter the portal, that's fine, but you're going to have to graduate first. So you're going to do it the right way, and you're going to be a legitimate graduate, and then you go and move. But you're not going to be hopping from school to school and not really establishing roots. And so, where are you going to truly find your best friend? And again, like where are you going to find, where are you going to call home? If they have a homecoming, where are you going to go? Right. I look at DJU, and he goes from Clemson to Oregon State. Then he goes from Oregon State to FSU. And it's like, are you really supplanting roots, or are you just kind of bouncing from here to here, trying to chase something? And so, and I tell people like me, it took me 3 years to get on the field. And I bided my time. I wasn't going to go and hop in the so-called portal because I wasn't getting my way. I had to earn my way to get there. And I wish that we could just kind of go back to that. And that's what the Nick Sabans are built on, is you earn, your way onto the field. Not just, we're not going to pout because you're not getting your way. But I think, a lot of it too, social media. People, they hype themselves up, and then they're expecting to go and play right away. And it doesn't happen. And so they want to bounce somewhere else.
Or when it doesn't happen. That's one of the things. I mean, character and a certain amount of toughness and stick-to-itiveness is lost, in my opinion, when somebody doesn't get a chance to start, and then then forget it, I'm going to leave. Whether it be mom and dad, whether it be just mom or just dad or whatever, and then me, myself, and I'm going to take off. I think that hurts the game.
It does. It does big time, because again, and what does that say to the person that has, really fought and gone above and beyond to earn that position, only to be replaced by somebody? When I looked at when USC and Lane Kiffin got, not Lane Kiffin, it was, who was the USC guy?
Ed Orgeron?
No, for USC right now, I can't even think of his.
Oh, Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley gets there, and he brings in like 40 new guys. And you're just kind of like, man, what happened to those kids that their dreams were to play at USC and be a USC Trojan, and all of a sudden now they're being told you don't have a scholarship available. And that's what actually happened at Colorado. We had a couple of kids from Buford that, they get there, and of course Deion Sanders comes in and says, hey, I'm pretty sure you guys can play somewhere. It's not going to be here. So I know that playing for Colorado was a dream of yours, but that's not going to happen. And you're just kind of like, man. And then, you just bring in a whole new group of people. So to your point, it just kind of messes up the game a little bit. And then when you look at the NIL, I think it's great that players get paid. I'm 100% for it. I wish that it were tied into more academics, because like you said, to the Vanderbilts and to the Harvards, the Stanfords, we are a school first and in athletics second. And I just think that if you tell a kid, hey, this is the potential that you can possibly earn, but a lot of it is going to be tied into, are you academically doing what you're supposed to do? Are you in the front of the class? Are you making the grades? And, for me as a Georgia guy, couldn't stand Steve Spurrier, couldn't stand Florida, but I respected him because he prided himself on graduation rates. Same with Holtz. These are guys that prided themselves on graduation rates. So I think if you mix those together to say, hey, this is the potential, but this is also has, I think that you come out with a better student athlete than what you're getting right now.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. My caveat to all of that, or the however, is the NCAA can't enforce any of that to where you and I both operate under the same rules.
Right.
It's just ridiculous now how illegitimate that the NCAA and the rules that are in place, or the rules that should be in place that aren't, are going to change this to where, why would I have to abide by a rule that you just said that should be great? Yep. Yeah, let's tie it into school. Let's do it. And someone's going to say, I'm not doing that. And they don't have to, because there's nothing in place right now. I think the genie's out of the bottle, and they're still trying to figure this out, unfortunately. And it's going to harm the game, I think, in the long run. I really do. But I want it to be able to do
right now. It's a mini NFL, and it's crazy to to go on campus and you see guys driving Porsches and Lamborghinis, and then you see other guys driving Honda Accords and just different things, and you're just you're just kind of wishing that somebody would go in and say, hey, instead of getting all this flashy stuff, like let's look at some stocks, let's look at some different things, and way to have that 40-year-old mentality, and that's what they call at Stanford. They're just saying you're making a 40-year-old decision when you go to Stanford, but just to kind of have them have that type of mindset, it translates better in the long run than it does, right in front of your face.
Well, yes, I agree with that. And in the fact that, some people win the lottery and they're broke within a couple of years because they don't know how to handle money.
Yes.
At 18 years old, if you gave me a bunch of money, I wouldn't know what to do with it either. So I think there's some sort of guardianship that needs to be enacted, and not by an agent, but somebody who says, listen, let's be responsible with how we take care of this for you so you don't blow it. And here's another thing, Juan. If you were making $2 or $3 million coming out of college when you were a junior and senior in that time, what's your motivation to go to the NFL?
That's true.
It's going to be completely different. You may have to literally take a pay cut, which is a lot of people tease, if they left SC or Alabama, they had to take a pay cut to go play for the Dolphins or for the Packers.
Well, look at Quinn Ewers. He was offered $8 million to go and play in college, and then he ends up being like a 7th round draft pick. So you're talking about a major pay cut. And it's one thing to come out of college debt free, but to come out of college debt free and then on top of that have $2 million, that would be incredible.
Absolutely. Or you mentioned earlier, there's a quarterback from the University of Colorado that drove a Lamborghini to classes. He's got more gold and diamonds around his neck than Tom Shane.
Right.
He's a 5th round draft pick right now. I wish him well. I hope he does well, but I don't know how to motivate that guy if I'm a coach, because he's already experienced life's greatest. How's he going to get through my 2-a-day practices that I have there during training camp?
You're right. You're absolutely right. Which again, I just, and then like, how are they going to be respectful to coaches? I mean, think about it. A lot of these kids are making more than their head coach, or a lot of the coaches that their direct coach that's coaching them. Are they going to be respectful? Are they going to think to themselves, hey, I'm making this amount of money. You're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So you have like a mini NFL is what, and it just. I miss the old college football before the transfer portal and the NIL.
It's changing before our very eyes, and how we go along with it, whether we look at something else or whether we embrace it and say, let's make some corrections, and mistakes that have been made need to be adjusted so that the game is better, not worse. I certainly hope all of that. Juan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. I love your insight. You've been touched in many different ways, and you have touched the game in so many different ways, from a high school, a collegiate, on a professional level, as a non-professional, getting to still observe it, and now as a father. Thank you for your insight.
I appreciate it, man. This was unbelievable. I thank you for allowing me on your show, and I appreciate your time.
Well, we certainly appreciate having you. I knew coming on that this was going to be a very special interview, and we touched on so many different things. Is there anything I missed? Let me know if I need to. Hey, there's one other thing I want to comment on before we go.
Well, I get an opportunity to coach my daughter in flag football, so I'm one of her coaches, and the most exciting thing for me is I get an opportunity to yell at her like I yelled at my boys as I coach them. So that's it.
In some respects, she has to know that you love her, and when we'll go out for ice cream after practice.
Exactly.
What age is your daughter?
She's 16.
Okay, so she's in high school playing.
Yeah, she's in high school, so she'll be.
Let's be brief. But we got to touch this. Is there anything that's growing faster than high school women's flag football? It's growing like weeds.
It's on fire. We just had a flag football camp for Buford, and we had like 30 something girls come out. I mean, it is, and that was just Buford, not to mention like what they're doing in Gwinnett County. They're having these youth leagues, and of course now it's going to be an Olympic sport for women's flag football. So it is really exploding.
I believe less than 5 years ago, there were about 20 or 30 high schools that were having a club sport. Now it's over 200. That it's a genuine high school. You can letter in it and everything. Am I close with my numbers?
Yes, you are. Yes, you
Wow.
are.
Yeah.
They're also offering partial scholarships for college now.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? That's fantastic. Well, all the best with that. And I would imagine speed, of course. There's not the physicality of as there was before, but the athleticism, the toughness, and um, I imagine it makes a dad like you real happy when you go. That one girl that's the pit bull, so to speak. She can do everything, and she's as tough as anybody. And you go, if you were a guy, I swear you'd be an All-American.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
But I love you. But you're going to look great at the prom. You're gorgeous, and
Exactly. Yes.
But
yes.
Man, I want you on my team because I know that you're the one that's going to get it done for us
all day, every day. Yes.
I love it, man. Fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Very unique episode here today. We want to thank Juan McDaniels for being a part of the show. Former Bulldog, played in Amsterdam of all places with Kurt Warner, a Hall of Famer, and now has a father, has a son, and a daughter who's been playing football. And what a great joy. We get an inside perspective, not only from him, from a national, different conferences that he's been a part of, but especially as an SEC. I think we'll visit with him again, especially when the season takes place. So for Juan Daniels, I'm Harper LaBelle saying thank you for tuning in, everybody. This has been 100 Yards of Football. Have a fantastic rest of your day.